Chima was a man who had it all, or so it seemed. In the bustling heart of Lagos, where wealth was power and power was everything, Chima stood among the giants. He was a billionaire, the owner of multiple companies, and lived in a sprawling mansion in Ikoyi. His house, with its high walls and manicured lawns, was the kind of place people whispered about as they passed. Yet, for all his riches, Chima felt a hollowness he couldn't ignore. The endless business meetings, extravagant parties, and luxurious trips had lost their charm. Every evening he returned to his grand silent mansion, where the only living soul that greeted him was Leo, his German shepherd. Leo wasn't just a pet. Over the years, he had become Chima's most loyal companion. He had been there through it all. The nights when Chima felt alone. The days when success brought nothing but exhaustion. More than once, Leo had saved Chima's life. There was the night when robbers broke into the mansion. While Chima slept, Leo had attacked the intruders, barking until the guards arrived. Another time, during a bout of illness, Leo had refused to leave Chima's side, a constant, comforting presence. But even Leo couldn't fill the emptiness Chima felt. "I think it's time, Leo," Chima said one evening, running a hand through his dog's fur. "It's time to bring someone into our lives." Leo looked at him, his dark eyes calm yet watchful, but Chima could only see his own longing reflected in them. The change came unexpectedly. At a friend's wedding in Victoria Island, Chima met Adugo. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her beauty was striking, the kind that turned heads and left people speechless. Her skin was smooth and golden, her eyes deep and enchanting. When she smiled, it was as if the entire room lit up. Chima, who had been unimpressed by countless introductions to wealthy Lagos socialites, found himself drawn to Adugo. They talked for hours that evening, and by the time the night was over, Chima knew he wanted to see her again. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Adugo seemed to be everything Chima had been searching for: charming, intelligent, and caring. She filled his once empty days with laughter and companionship. For the first time in years, Chima felt like his life was complete. But not everyone was as captivated by Adugo. Leo's behavior changed the first time she visited the mansion. When Adugo walked through the door, Leo began barking, a sharp, aggressive bark that echoed through the house. Chima, embarrassed, scolded him. "Leo, stop it," he said, trying to calm the dog. Adugo smiled gently, brushing it off. "Maybe he's just not used to new people," she said. Chima nodded, but the barking didn't stop. Every time Adugo visited, Leo would bark, his eyes fixed on her, as if he could see something no one else could. "It's jealousy," Chima told himself. "He's just not used to sharing my attention." As their relationship deepened, Chima began to imagine a future with Adugo. He started bringing her to events, introducing her to friends and associates. She charmed them all, her presence lighting up every room. Yet the dogs told a different story. One evening, Chima and Adugo went for a walk in the neighborhood. As they passed a neighbor's house, the dogs behind the gate erupted into furious barking. Adugo tensed, her hand gripping Chima's arm tightly. "Strange," Chima muttered, glancing back at the barking dogs, but Adugo said nothing, her face unreadable. This pattern repeated itself. At every event they attended, if there was a dog present, it would bark at Adugo. At first, Chima dismissed it as coincidence, but as time went on, the barking grew impossible to ignore. Even at his mansion, Leo's barking grew louder and more relentless whenever Adugo was around. "Maybe he needs training," Chima said aloud one night, more to himself than anyone else. But deep down, a seed of doubt was beginning to grow. One evening, Adugo was preparing dinner in Chima's kitchen, humming softly as she moved around. Leo sat at the doorway, growling under his breath. Chima watched the scene from the living room, a strange unease settling over him. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" he whispered, his eyes on Leo. Leo looked up at him, his growling momentarily stopping, before letting out another sharp bark. Chima shook his head, brushing the thought away. He didn't want to think too much about it. Adugo made him happy, and that was all that mattered. Not long after, Chima decided to propose. He took Adugo to an exclusive rooftop restaurant overlooking the Lagos skyline. Beneath the glittering city lights, he presented her with a diamond ring. Adugo's face lit up with a smile, and she said yes without hesitation. Chima felt a wave of relief and joy. He had found the one. But as they embraced, a stray dog barked from the street below. The sound pierced the air, its echo lingering like an unspoken warning. Adugo pulled away slightly, her eyes darting toward the noise before she quickly composed herself. Chima ignored it, focusing instead on the woman in front of him. As Chima and Adugo prepared for their wedding, Leo's barking grew louder, more desperate, as if time was running out. Chima tried to brush it off, but a lingering question gnawed at him. Why did the dogs only bark at her? He would soon find out, though the answer would shake him to his core. The wedding was a grand affair, the kind that Lagos's elite would talk about for months. Chima spared no expense. The venue was decorated with gold and white drapes, chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the finest champagne flowed freely. Adugo looked stunning in her wedding dress, her beauty drawing admiration from every corner of the room. As they exchanged vows, Chima felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Adugo was his, and the emptiness he had carried seemed to melt away. Even so, there was a shadow over his joy, a faint doubt he couldn't quite explain. Leo's barking echoed in his mind. At the mansion that evening, Chima unlocked the door and stepped inside with his new bride. Leo was waiting, his ears flat and his teeth bared. The barking began immediately, a thunderous noise that seemed to shake the walls. Adugo flinched, holding tightly to Chima's arm. "Leo, stop it!" Chima shouted, frustration creeping into his voice. But Leo didn't stop. He barked and growled, pacing as if trying to block Adugo from entering the house. Chima had to drag him away and lock him in a separate room. "I'm sorry about this," he said, forcing a smile. "I'll figure out what's wrong with him." Adugo nodded but said nothing. She seemed tense, her usual graceful demeanor replaced with something guarded. Days turned into weeks, and Adugo settled into the mansion. She transformed the house into a home, adding personal touches to the decor and preparing meals that made Chima feel cared for. Yet Leo's barking grew worse. It wasn't just at the sight of Adugo anymore. At night he barked incessantly, even when Adugo wasn't near. The neighbors began to complain. "Chima, what's wrong with your dog?" one of them asked during a community meeting. "He barks all night. It's disturbing everyone." Chima apologized, but the complaints kept coming. One neighbor added, "It's not just your dog, my dogs bark too, but only when your wife walks by." The comment unsettled Chima. He had noticed it himself, how every dog seemed to react to Adugo. It wasn't just the neighbors' dogs either. When they attended events, if there was a dog present, it would growl or bark furiously at Adugo. At one gala, Adugo accidentally walked past a group of security dogs. They lunged at her, their handlers barely able to hold them back. The incident caused a scene, with guests whispering and staring. Adugo had hurriedly left, embarrassed, and Chima had followed, offering apologies on her behalf. "I don't understand it," Adugo said later that night, her voice shaking. "Why do they keep barking at me?" "I don't know," Chima admitted, though the doubt in his heart grew stronger. One evening, Chima invited a few close friends over for dinner. It was meant to be a quiet, relaxed gathering, a chance for Adugo to feel more at ease after the gala fiasco. As the guests arrived, Leo barked from the locked room where he had been confined. His barks were so loud that one guest commented, "That dog sounds like it's warning us about something." Chima forced a laugh. "He's just protective." The dinner went smoothly until Adugo stepped outside to get some air. As she crossed the garden, one of the neighbor's dogs, a Doberman, began barking wildly from behind the fence. Its barks grew louder and louder until the neighbor came out, shouting for the dog to be quiet. "It's always like this when your wife passes," the neighbor muttered to Chima. That night, Chima lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Leo's barking echoed faintly from the room below. He couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. The dogs weren't barking at anyone else but Adugo. Why? A week later, another incident pushed Chima to the edge. He and Adugo attended a charity event at a luxury hotel. Everything was perfect until Adugo entered the ballroom. A police dog stationed near the entrance began barking furiously, its handler struggling to calm it down. Soon, other dogs in the vicinity joined in, creating a chaotic scene. Adugo froze, her face pale, while guests whispered and pointed. "That's the same woman from the last event," someone said. "Why do dogs react to her like that?" Chima quickly escorted Adugo out, furious and embarrassed. In the car, Adugo didn't say a word, staring out the window with a faraway look in her eyes. Chima wanted to comfort her, but his own unease silenced him. Back at the mansion, Chima sat in his study, his mind racing. He couldn't ignore it anymore. The dogs were trying to tell him something, but what? He glanced at Leo, who sat quietly now, his eyes steady and watchful. "You've been trying to warn me, haven't you?" Chima said aloud. Leo's ears twitched, and he let out a soft bark as if in response. Chima leaned back in his chair, his chest heavy with doubt. Adugo was perfect, beautiful, kind and loving. But the dog saw something he didn't, something they all seemed to sense. For the first time, Chima allowed himself to question his wife. Who was she really? And what was it about her that made the dogs react so violently? Chima's resolve hardened. He would find out the truth about Adugo, no matter what it cost him. Unbeknownst to Adugo, he began making plans to travel to her village in secret, hoping the answers he needed were there. Chima couldn't shake the unease growing in his heart. Every bark, every growl from Leo seemed to echo louder in his mind. Adugo's beauty and charm had once blinded him, but now he began to notice the cracks, subtle things that had escaped him before. Adugo was reserved about her past. She had told him she came from a quiet village, but when pressed for details, her answers were vague. She never spoke of family, friends, or memories of her childhood. "It's all so long ago," she would say, brushing off his questions with a smile. But Chima couldn't dismiss the truth anymore. Something was wrong, and it was time to find out what. Early one morning, while Adugo was out shopping, Chima made his move. He called in a favor from his private investigator, Emeka, and gave him the few details Adugo had shared about her hometown. "I need to know everything," Chima said, his voice firm. "Her past, her family, anything you can find." Emeka hesitated. "Are you sure, sir? Digging into your wife's past?" "I need answers," Chima interrupted. "Just find them." That evening, Chima played the role of the loving husband. He sat with Adugo at dinner, listened as she talked about her plans for redecorating the house, and smiled when she asked his opinion on color schemes. But all the while, his thoughts were elsewhere. He was waiting for Emeka's call. 3 days later, the call came. "I found her village," Emeka said, his tone cautious. "There's something you need to know, sir." Chima's chest tightened. "Go on." "I spoke to some of the villagers," Emeka began. "Adugo. She's known there, but not in a good way. They say she was once very popular with men. Too popular. She had a reputation as the kind of girl every man wanted, but no one would marry. Her beauty attracted them, but they always left her." Chima frowned, his grip tightening on the phone. "And?" "There's more," Emeka continued. "They say no man ever stayed because something about her felt off. Eventually she was desperate. She went to a witch doctor, a powerful one. After that, everything changed." Chima's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "They say she used a charm to ensnare a wealthy man," Emeka said carefully. "But the charm required a terrible sacrifice. Her younger sister. She offered the girl's life to seal the spell." Chima sat down heavily, the words sinking in. "And the charm? What does it do?" "The villagers believe the charm guarantees marriage to a rich man," Emeka replied. "But there's a price. The man must die within 5 years, leaving her to inherit everything." Chima felt the world tilt around him. His breath came in shallow gasps as he tried to process what he had just heard. Adugo had been perfect, too perfect. Was it all a lie? "Thank you, Emeka," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "That will be all." That night, Chima couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling as Adugo slept peacefully beside him. The dogs barking, the whispers of the neighbors, the strange unease he'd felt. It all made sense now. Leo had been trying to warn him from the start and he hadn't listened. Morning came, and Chima knew what he had to do. He needed to confront Adugo, but not without preparing first. He reached out to a spiritual healer recommended by Amika, someone who might help him break the charm and protect himself. The healer, an elderly woman named Mama Iabo, lived on the outskirts of Lagos. Her home was small and cluttered with herbs, charms, and strange carvings. She listened quietly as Chima explained everything: the dogs, the villagers' stories, and the charm. "You're lucky to be alive," Mama Iabo said, her voice calm but firm. "The charm binds you to her. It blinds you to her true nature, making you fall in love without reason." "Can it be broken?" Chima asked, desperation in his voice. Mama Iabo nodded. "It can, but it won't be easy. The charm feeds on her presence. You'll need to distance yourself from her for the ritual to work, and your dog, Leo, will play a crucial role. Dogs sense what humans cannot. He is your protector." Chima felt a surge of hope. "What do I need to do?" Mama Iabo handed him a small pouch filled with herbs and stones. "Place this under your bed for 3 nights. During that time, avoid her as much as possible. On the 4th day, bring her to me. The truth will reveal itself." Returning home, Chima felt the weight of his decision. Adugo greeted him with her usual radiant smile, but he couldn't bring himself to return it fully. He followed Mama Iabo's instructions, placing the pouch under the bed and keeping his distance from Adugo. She noticed his withdrawal and questioned him, but he brushed it off, claiming work stress. On the 3rd night, Chima lay awake, waiting for dawn. Leo lay beside the bed, his eyes fixed on the door, as if sensing the danger. Chima reached down to stroke his fur. "You've been trying to save me all along," he murmured. "I should have trusted you." As the first light of dawn crept into the room, Chima knew the moment of truth was near. He would take Adugo to Mama Iabo that evening, and the secrets of her past would finally come to light. But what he would discover would be more terrifying than he ever imagined. The morning felt heavy, the air in the mansion thick with tension. Chima sat at the dining table, barely touching his breakfast. Across from him, Adugo smiled faintly, but her eyes held a flicker of concern. "You've been distant these past few days," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of sadness. Chima forced a smile. "Work has been overwhelming," he lied. "I've got a lot on my mind." Adugo reached for his hand, her touch gentle. "You don't have to carry it alone, Chima. I'm here for you." He nodded, pulling his hand away. "I know." The words felt hollow, but Chima couldn't afford to show his true feelings. Tonight he would take Adugo to Mama Iabo. Whatever spell had been cast over him, whatever secrets she was hiding, they would be revealed. The day crawled by. Chima avoided Adugo as much as he could, locking himself in his study under the guise of handling urgent business. He spent the hours replaying everything Emeka and Mama Iabo had told him, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Adugo's charm, the sacrifice, the dog's warnings, it all pointed to one horrifying truth. She wasn't the woman he thought she was. As evening approached, Chima felt a mix of dread and determination. He called Adugo into the living room where Leo sat at his feet, his watchful eyes fixed on her. The dog let out a low growl as she entered, but Chima silenced him with a firm hand. "I need you to come with me," Chima said, his tone neutral. Adugo tilted her head, confused. "Where are we going?" "To see someone who can help us," he replied. "I've been feeling off lately. I think it's time we sought answers." Her smile faltered, and for a brief moment, Chima thought he saw fear flash in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "Of course," she said, her voice steady, "if it will ease your mind." The drive to Mama Iyabo's home was tense. Chima gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. Adugo sat quietly beside him, staring out the window. Leo was in the back seat, his growls rumbling softly, as if he knew what was coming. When they arrived, Mama Iabo was waiting at the doorway, her weathered face calm but serious. "Come in," she said, gesturing for them to enter. The room smelled of herbs and burning incense. Candles flickered on every surface, casting long shadows across the walls. Mama Iabo motioned for Chima and Adugo to sit. Leo positioned himself at Chima's feet, his gaze locked on Adugo. The healer studied Adugo for a long moment before speaking. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked. Adugo smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Chima said he hasn't been feeling well. I'm here to support him." Mama Iabo nodded slowly, her piercing gaze unwavering. "We shall see." She began to chant softly, sprinkling a mix of herbs onto a small flame. The fire flared, filling the room with a strange, acrid smoke. Adugo shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers gripping the edge of the chair. "Hold still," Mama Iabo commanded, her voice sharp. She took a small pouch and waved it in front of Adugo's face. Adugo recoiled, her smile disappearing. "What is this?" she demanded, her tone defensive. The healer ignored her, continuing the ritual. As the chanting grew louder, Leo barked sharply, the sound cutting through the air like a knife. Adugo flinched, her calm facade crumbling. "You don't need to do this," she said, her voice trembling. "Chima, please, let's go home." Chima's jaw tightened. "We're not leaving until I know the truth." Suddenly, Adugo let out a low, guttural sound that didn't seem human. Her body tensed, and her eyes darkened, as if shadows had swallowed them whole. The room grew cold, the air thick with an unnatural chill. Mama Iabo's voice rose, her chants reaching a fever pitch. The flames in the room roared, and Adugo cried out, her hands clawing at the air. "Stop this!" she screamed. "You don't understand!" Chima stood frozen, his heart pounding as he watched the transformation before him. Adugo's beautiful face twisted with rage and desperation. Her voice deepened, reverberating through the room. "You think you can undo this?" she snarled, her eyes blazing. "Do you know what I sacrificed to have him?" The room fell silent. Mama Iabo stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Tell him the truth. Let him see what you've done." Adugo collapsed to her knees, her body shaking. Tears streamed down her face, but there was no softness in her expression. "I did what I had to," she spat. "No one wanted me. No one cared. I gave everything, my sister, my soul, to have a life worth living. And now you want to take it from me?" Chima felt his stomach churn. The woman he had loved, the one he had thought was his salvation, had built her life on lies and blood. "You sacrificed your own sister?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Adugo's laughter was hollow and bitter. She was nothing, just a child. What does it matter now? Mama Iabo placed a hand on Chima's shoulder, her touch grounding him. "The charm is broken," she said. "She has no power over you anymore." Chima looked at Adugo, who now seemed small and defeated. The woman he had once adored was gone, replaced by a stranger cloaked in guilt and hatred. Leo barked once, a sound of triumph, as if to say, "You're free now." As Adugo's sobs echoed in the small room, Chima turned away, his heart heavy with grief and betrayal. The spell was broken, but the scars would remain. Yet one question lingered in his mind. Could he ever trust anyone again? Little did he know, this was only the beginning of his journey toward healing. Chima drove home in silence, the events of the evening replaying in his mind. The city lights of Lagos blurred past him, but his focus was elsewhere. Beside him, Adugo sat quietly, her head bowed. The once confident and radiant woman seemed like a shadow of herself now. Her beauty no longer enchanted him. Instead, it reminded him of the darkness hidden beneath. Leo sat in the back seat, his eyes fixed on Adugo. There was no barking now, no growling, just a calm, watchful gaze. Chima wondered if his loyal dog felt the same relief he did. The charm was broken, and the truth was out. Yet Chima's heart was heavy. The betrayal was too much to bear. When they reached the mansion, Adugo hesitated at the door. "Chima, please," she began, her voice trembling. "I made mistakes, but everything I did..." Don't, Chima interrupted, his voice cold. I don't want to hear excuses. She fell silent, tears pooling in her eyes. Chima sighed, exhaustion pulling at him. I'll arrange for you to leave tomorrow. You can take whatever you came with, but you'll get nothing more. Her tears spilled over, but she nodded, knowing there was no point in arguing. Without another word, she walked into the house and disappeared up the staircase. Chima stood at the doorway, staring after her. He didn't feel anger anymore, just an overwhelming emptiness. Leo brushed against his leg, breaking his thoughts. You've always known, haven't you? Chima said softly, bending to stroke the dog's head. You tried to warn me, and I ignored you. Leo wagged his tail gently, his eyes filled with the kind of loyalty Chima knew he didn't deserve. The next morning, Adugo packed her belongings and left the mansion. Chima didn't see her off. He stayed in his study, staring out the window as her taxi pulled away. There was no relief, no satisfaction, just a lingering sadness. She had betrayed him, yes, but Chima couldn't ignore the pain in her eyes the night before. Had she always been this way? Or had desperation turned her into the woman he now knew? The questions gnawed at him, but he shoved them aside. Adugo was gone, and he would never let himself be deceived again. Days turned into weeks, and the mansion grew quieter. Without Adugo, Chima's life returned to its old rhythm, but it felt different now. The silence was heavier, almost suffocating. He threw himself into work, expanding his businesses and attending meetings, but the emptiness lingered. One evening, as he sat in the garden with Leo, Chima let out a long sigh. Maybe I'm just not meant for this, he said aloud. Leo tilted his head, as if waiting for more. Marriage, love? It's not for me. I was blind and it nearly cost me my life. Leo barked softly, a sound of agreement. Chima chuckled, the first real smile he'd had in weeks. You're all I need, boy, he said, rubbing the dog's ears. You've been my protector, my friend. I should have trusted you from the start. Despite his resolve to move on, Chima found himself haunted by what he had learned. He couldn't stop thinking about Adugo's sacrifice, the innocent life she had taken to gain the charm. The weight of it pressed on him, a constant reminder of how easily greed and desperation could corrupt. One day, Chima returned to Mama Iabo's home. The healer greeted him with a knowing look. You still carry the burden, she said. Chima nodded. I don't understand why she did it. How can someone go so far for wealth? Mama Iabo's expression softened. Desperation makes people do unimaginable things, but that doesn't excuse her actions. You must let go, Chima. Dwelling on her choices will only poison your heart. Chima sighed, his shoulders slumping. I don't think I can trust anyone again. Mama Iabo reached for his hand, her grip firm. Trust takes time, but you must not close your heart completely. Learn from this, yes, but don't let it turn you into a man who fears life. You are stronger than this. Her words stayed with Chima as he returned home. That night, he made a decision. He would not let Adugo's betrayal define him, but he also wouldn't seek love again. He would focus on his businesses, his philanthropy, and the life he had built. Marriage, he decided, was a risk he would never take again. Weeks later, Chima made an announcement to his staff and friends. He was launching a foundation for stray dogs in Lagos. The organization would provide shelter, medical care, and training for abandoned dogs. Leo has been my protector and friend, Chima said at the launch event. This is my way of honoring his loyalty. The foundation was an instant success, and Chima found a sense of purpose in its work. He spent more time with Leo, visiting shelters and meeting the dogs his organization had saved. Slowly, the weight of Adugo's betrayal began to lift. Chima realized that while love had hurt him, loyalty had saved him. As Chima stood in his garden one evening, watching the sunset, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Leo lay beside him, his head resting on Chima's foot. We've been through a lot, haven't we? Chima said, his voice soft. Leo's tail wagged in response, and Chima smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time he felt ready to face it. And as the stars began to dot the sky, Chima made a silent vow. He would live his life with purpose, guided by loyalty, honesty, and the lessons of his past. Years passed, and Chima's life took on a different kind of meaning. The mansion in Ikoyi became quieter, but it no longer felt empty. It was filled with the laughter of visiting children from his dog foundation, the barking of rescued dogs, and the sense of fulfillment that came from helping others. Leo, now older, remained Chima's loyal companion, a constant reminder of the dangers they had overcome together. The foundation grew beyond Lagos, expanding to other parts of Nigeria, earning Chima praise not for his wealth, but for his compassion and dedication to the voiceless. Chima's vow to never marry again held firm. He attended weddings and celebrations of friends and family, but politely declined offers to introduce him to anyone new. "My heart is full as it is," he would say, smiling. One day, while visiting a dog shelter in Abeokuta, Chima stood watching as volunteers played with the dogs. A small child ran up to him, clutching the leash of a scruffy puppy. "This one's my favorite," the child said, beaming. Chima knelt, ruffling the dog's fur. "You've got good taste," he said. "Loyalty is priceless." The child nodded solemnly, as if understanding. "Like your dog, Leo?" Chima smiled, looking over at Leo, who was lounging in the shade. Exactly like Leo. As the years went on, Chima's story became a legend among his friends and acquaintances. People marveled at his strength, his wisdom, and his choice to turn pain into purpose. He never shared the full details of Adugo's betrayal, but he would occasionally say, "Loyalty is the greatest gift you can receive, and the greatest lesson you can learn." One evening, as the sun set over Lagos, Chima sat in his garden with Leo by his side. The air was cool, and the city buzzed faintly in the distance. Chima closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling a peace that had taken years to find. "Thank you," he whispered, more to the universe than anyone in particular. Leo's tail thumped against the ground as if he understood. And as the stars began to light up the night sky, Chima leaned back, content. His life wasn't perfect, but it was his own, filled with purpose, loyalty, and the quiet joy of knowing he had finally found his way.